I'm Carolyn Holzman, and this is Confessions of an SEO. I'd like to thank Ahrefs for being the sponsor of this episode. We're halfway through Season 5, and I'm glad you're here. Confessions is a short-form chat about SEO, and not from a conventional viewpoint, more from, the bleeding edge. So keep your arms and legs inside the vehicle. All right, so welcome to Season 5, Episode 25, Confessions of an SEO. And this is Mountain Edition 2025. Last week's topic was my ruminating over the potential for life or death situations in SEO, not directly, but things that we couldn't have imagined, 16 years ago. The title of it is called The Power Paradox, AI Energy Crossroads. Today's episode, I'm calling The Fundamental Flaw Corrupting Your Data. Specifically, your positional correlation data. Now, many of you know my history with this and how much the software I use does provide correlational data to provide information on what are the deficits, right? So this is a challenging topic for me. Wrapping my head around it, I didn't take to it immediately, but it's kind of stuck in my craw the last couple of weeks, and I think it just has to be voiced. This episode is sponsored by Ahrefs, and I want to tell you about a study they did on factors that correlate. See, that's going to be a key theme today. The factors that correlate with brand appearance in AI overviews. It's from a LinkedIn post. There's a graph, and I will put the link in there. Tim Solo is who posted about it, and I think it's pretty informative. He also mentioned another article that, quite frankly, it's a bit of a huge, thickly textured article about how LLMs work. But you definitely want to check it out. And if you don't know what all this is, the significance of it is that company names are starting to appear in these AI overviews that precede results in many search engines. So this is kind of filed under the "if you can't beat them, join them" folder, since now a lot of traffic is no longer going into organic search results. These mentions that appear in these AI-generated summaries are now considered like the hot ticket into optimization. So this study was looking at the results of approximately 75,000 brands to see if there was some other factor that occurred in this same time in a statistically significant way. In other words, would more use of this factor lead to more mentions of that brand in these AI summaries? Better described as the secret to getting your brand mentioned by AI. And you want to know what it is? You don't want to go over to LinkedIn and just check it? You want me to tell you right now? Okay, well, I'll tell you. All right. Drum roll. Branded web mentions was a clear winner, and it came in at 0.664. Now, if you're not fluent in correlational math, you just have to understand that it's a way to describe, do things move together or not? So in this particular case, closer you get to 1, it moves very much clearly and directly, together. And a lower, closer to 0, it's less strong. So, but with this type of correlation, this 0.664, this is the kind of math that drives decision-making, not just academic interest. And I know as a tester, everybody thinks we only get interested on that level and nothing that can really help out in the real world. Now, why? Why do they do this? Well, Ahrefs has introduced a new feature. It's called Brand Radar. And with it, you can see how AI presents your brand in search results. You can compare your brand's visibility against your competitors. You can identify key topics that are driving AI search traffic to your site. They do have it available for all major chatbots. So it'd be ChatGPT, Perplexity, AI overviews, and soon Gemini and Microsoft's Copilot. So you can benchmark your brand's performance, track it against competitors, and spot shifts over time. And this is data that really informs in this beginning part of these AI overviews. But you can check it out. So back to the topic of correlational data, and please don't worry, it's safe. I'm not going to drop you off a math cliff. Believe me, it's been done to me before. I didn't like it. I'm not going to do it either. Now, I have for a long time loved software that provides correlational data, positional correlational data, the things that move together in search results. It's been, part of SEO testing. I mean, we may not have known it at the time what we were doing would eventually turn into this, but that's how we tested various factors in 2015. Not were they strong or not or weak kind of thing, but we started to, evolve to see what moved together. And, then fast forward to now, it's culminated with multiple softwares providing that kind of informational gold that would guide our on-page SEO priorities. But now we've entered a phase where, because of Google, and let me go on record as saying it's all Google's fault, there's the potential for a fundamental flaw that's corrupting our positional correlation data. One of the most exciting aspects in the last 10 years of my work was learning how all these math formulas work. And I know I make real mathematicians cringe when I describe it that way. But essentially, we would be comparing on-page factors in relation to their numerical position in the search. Now, in SEO testing, we were able to isolate them and kind of create our own little set of search results. It's different now. When you hear SEOs talk about diversity of factors, what that translates to in general language, it's a way to describe how the higher ranking pages were the ones that seemed to have more diversity in their on-page optimizations, more factors. Now, back in 2016, the big hush, hush, don't tell anybody in the SEO testing community was that pages with bulleted lists or ordered lists tested at a high correlation within our little tests. So everyone who knew about this kind of jumped in on the bulleted list train. Looking back, it was a juvenile understanding of factor variations. Keywords or topical entities now go in lots of places in the HTML of a page. It's way more than just the strong ones. The strong ones tested out like title, H1s, and so on. So, once you fill up those main ones, there are lots of lesser placements. However, they would all together in the real results, they would all together add up to basically demonstrating a strong optimization based on how many different factors that Google valued, that Google was measuring, were in play. There was even a time when someone ran a test and declared that the secret to SEO optimization was an H3 in your content. I mean, it is cute, to look back and realize that even as testers, we may have all been guided by the one thing mentality, that this one thing was the secret to ranking number one. Spoiler alert, we haven't found it yet. Now that you have a better feeling for what positional correlation data is, what factors move in a clear manner that appears to influence where a page ranks, essentially by making that page more relevant on the topic than the others. So, what is the fundamental flaw that's corrupting this positional correlation data. I hate to sound like a broken record, but remember helpful content? I've spent the last year or so making noise about its Achilles heel. Damn it. It's a critical and just unnecessary weakness in how the helpful or rather unhelpful content is determined. So when Google doesn't take into account the canonical when there are table of contents on the page, now you understand the canonical is the main URL. The table of content links are the ones that have the exact same URL, a slash, and then a pound sign, and then some words behind it. You know, the data tells us, Google doesn't tell us, but you might have to listen to my other episode on that. But anyway, the data behaves as if Google treats all of those table of content link URLs like different pages, not nested underneath the canonical, but completely different pages. And in the end, what ends up happening is the canonical that was ranking well suddenly kind of gets suppressed. And it's because of this false narrative of duplicate content. Because ultimately, all of these URLs, they are the same page, right? They are exact word for word, even down to the HTML replicates of each other. They're not meant to be considered separate pages. So, okay. So now we have something that is relevant for a topic, but it has table of content links on the page. So what happens is eventually over time, these things start to disappear, get washed out of the Search Console data, and that canonical, that main page, starts to drop in the results. Maybe let's say they were number 1 and now they're 14. And you have to keep in mind that there is no on-page option to save this page. There's no way to backlink your way out of it. And from all accounts, people have tried everything. So, now we have a canonical page or a canonical URL that's been put through the ringer. Maybe it has really great backlinks. Maybe it was optimized to the hilt. But because of helpful content and its position being downgraded, in the correlational math, the full story is not apparent because these tools only measure that one page. So the data case in that scenario that I just described could be that having good backlinks is actually making the page rank lower, right? Because if they were good, you'd rank higher. But nobody thinks, wait a minute, maybe there's some table of contents links in there, and that page is being suppressed now. Now, I do think there are topics in which it is less likely for a site to have table of content links, but you will find it on all sorts of niches, especially those that have blog sections. But what we have here is a case where it's possible and likely that there are some competitive and non-competitive SERPs where Google, because of the helpful content rules and suppression of the canonical page that was doing so well, that afterwards, Google is now no longer serving perhaps the most relevant page. Here's the kicker. We have an underlying bias in understanding that we think Google is always serving the more relevant page. I mean, when it comes to the basis of correlational SEO software, that's what those are built on, is that understanding. Now, give you a little background. Some of us used to play around with the data that we would pull, and if you changed the position of a page in the data, you could rerun the correlational formulas if you knew them. And you could see just how even a couple of positions would alter the data and tell a different story. Now, I know there's always the possibility that data can lie, but with helpful content in the mix and knowing that this is a possibility, that the most relevant page is no longer on page 1, is it any wonder why people who want to make their page more relevant might be digging in the wrong place? You know, they could be removing factors because a tool told them that another factor moved more, but that appearance of that moving more was artificially created by helpful content suppressing a page from a more relevant, or previously considered more relevant, that page, because the table of content links kind of pushed it down. Since this is an audio podcast, you cannot see my hair is on fire about this. And here's the broader implication. This possibility suggests that much of the correlational SEO research conducted post-September 2023 may be fundamentally flawed, because our research is measuring, secondary effects rather than the primary ranking factors. And that may explain why so many traditional SEO strategies seem less effective today. The data we're using to guide our decisions has been systematically corrupted by the helpful content system's treatment of technically valid canonical structures as separate pages, right? There's nothing wrong, inherently wrong, about having table of contents on your page, even though now Google tells us they might be hurting you. So how do we correct for this? If Google's not going to fix this flaw? Well, first, it's always a good idea not to blindly do what a tool recommends. It's like you have to know why you're doing what you're doing. And of course, you have to know your niche to know if this situation is even a possibility. Secondly, be aware of what you've done to your page. If we've been making so many modifications on our content, you know, we can't rank for anything anymore. You know, and it's a bit disconcerting not to remember what changes were made and when. So, especially now, it's always been a good idea, but especially now, keep a log. As an industry, we are still on a page-centric analysis, meaning we look at only one page from top to bottom, that up and down silo, instead of a sideways silo between pages. Software tools likely, if they want to at least give us a chance, are going to need to look if table of content links are present. And if any are looking to add that to their software, I'd appreciate a citation. So at least now, going back to the AI, at least now we're in the age of AI-branded co-occurrence. But I think ultimately what we're in is officially three-dimensional chess at the very least. That's it for me this week. Thank you for being a listener. If you have any questions about today's topic, you can reach out and text your question to Confessions at 512-222-3132. Thank you again to Ahrefs for being the sponsor of this episode. Check out the link in the description. Start using the brand radar to benchmark your performance. If you've got pages disappearing in Search Console, or you need to get a fresh take on what's going on, reach out to me on Facebook or LinkedIn. My indexing software is called Indexilla. It's a search engine discovery tool designed to get your pages found and indexed faster without relying on tiered links, pings, or deprecated indexing APIs. You can find it at indexzilla.io. My indexation research project, Crawl or No Crawl, on Substack is going to complete 4 years this summer. As a sustaining member at $18 a month, you'll receive daily status reports to answer the question, is it me or is indexing off today? Search for Crawl or No Crawl. Thank you for listening, and until next week, I'll see you in the SERPs.